and I'm grateful and honored that you invited me to come and speak to you this afternoon. When I was asked if I could speak today, I volunteered because one of my favorite things to talk about is interfaith work and the bringing together of people who approach religion and spirituality in fundamentally different ways, which I have been told by my coworkers at my day job is not exactly normal. I would like to make it clear that although I have worked for the Southwest Interfaith Team, or SWIFT, and I am currently their secretary, I am not trying to, nor do I have the power to speak on behalf of SWIFT in any way, shape, or form. Anything that I say today is entirely my own opinions and does not necessarily reflect the views of SWIFT and Interfaith as an interfaith organization. But from my time in SWIFT and other interfaith experiences, I have learned that interfaith work is necessary, undeniably hard, and religious diversity in the United States cannot be avoided. And so let me repeat that. Interfaith work is necessary, undeniably hard, and religious diversity in the United States cannot be avoided. In February 2014, Michael Sam was an objectively great defensive football player. He was the Southeastern Conference Defensive Player of the Year. Yet Michael Sam was only a 3rd to 5th pick for the NFL draft. The reason for this discrepancy was obvious. If he was chosen, Sam would have been the first openly gay player in the history of the NFL. Many Americans were surprised by the sportscaster who decided to shine a light on this great athlete being sidelined because of his sexual orientation. The sportscaster was the white-haired, barrel-chested, Southern drawling Dale Henson of the local ABC affiliate TV channel in Dallas, Texas. This was a Southern white man and whose appearance alone would have blended in seamlessly at a monster truck rally, barbecue, white mega church, or any of the other events that we as non-Southerners typically associate with the white American South. Dale Henson, in a televised editorial, highlighted the hypocrisy of those NFL officials and fans who were opposed to Sam being picked because of his sexuality by pointing out the horrendous behavior of many other athletes who had been drafted. As Henson said in a scathing critique, quote, "You beat a woman and you drag her down a flight of stairs, pulling her hair by the roots. You're the 4th guy taken in the NFL draft. You kill people while driving drunk. That guy's welcome. You lie to police trying to cover up murder. We're comfortable with that. You love another man. Well, now you've gone too far." Henson continued by stating that, quote, "I'm not always comfortable when a man tells me he's gay. I don't understand his world, but I do understand that he's part of mine." Henson then quoted the civil rights activist Audre Lorde, who wrote, quote, "It is not our differences that divide us. It is our inability to recognize, accept, and celebrate those differences." I want to tell all of you that I am by no means a sports person. I can literally count, the number of sports games I have watched from beginning to end on both hands. Yet I was blown away when I heard Dale Henson's words. And despite his outward appearance and the state in which he resides, Dale Henson is and has been a supporter of liberal causes for years. But the fact that he is both a Texan and politically liberal is not what struck a deep, resonant chord with me, though. No, what struck me was that in his statement, he both affirmed his discomfort with Michael Sam's sexuality, but he also fully and unconditionally affirmed Sam's humanity and his right to a place in his, Henson's world, the world of professional football. That's why I love that moment, and I think that despite the fact this is not an interfaith interaction, lessons from this story can be applied to interfaith situations. Because most interfaith situations involve people who view the world in fundamentally different ways. These differences can be daunting. I'm not going to lie, even just by mentioning sexual orientation in an interfaith context, I'm already walking a pretty narrow tightrope. I went back and forth on whether to even discuss this story because of the feeling it brings up between liberals and conservatives within the major world religious traditions. But this is where I see the challenge of interfaith cooperation. Sometimes interfaith cooperation is focused on similarities, and other times it is an attempt to build a bridge over the widest of chasms. And I'm aware that some liberal religious people will think that after hearing this story that Henson should have been fully comfortable with Michael Sam's sexual orientation. And I'm not going to try to argue with that. Instead, I'm going to point out that in a religiously diverse society, there will always always be people who disagree with you. And maybe I'm wrong, but I can see only 3 choices on how to approach people who see something in a fundamentally different way than I do. Ignore them, hate and dehumanize them, or to try to recognize their humanity as hard as it is and find common ground with them. I see interfaith cooperation as the 3rd choice. I hear that 3rd choice in Dale Henson's words. And I admire Dale Henson's honesty in saying that he's a little uncomfortable when someone tells him they are gay, just like I admire those co-workers of mine who have told us they are uncomfortable after finding out that I'm a Christian. I think that it is okay to be honest with people and to express your discomfort when dealing with religious diversity. However, it is not okay to reject someone and to deny them the respect that they deserve as a human being because of their faith. All religious groups share the same earth, and we are all part of the same human family. This same human family is split into different worlds, as Hanson said, but these different worlds do often exist in the same schools, in the same workplaces, same neighborhoods, same towns, and definitely occupy the same larger world. I'm not aware of any alien believers yet. Those same communities and planet are filled with innumerable problems. The only way I can see us having any hope of improving our own lives and the lives of our neighbors is through working with people from different worlds, ergo interfaith cooperation. This is why interfaith cooperation is not just important, it is a necessity. Albeit difficult whether we like it or not, and some of us obviously do not. Our nation is becoming more diverse racially, ethnically, and religiously. At this point in my speech, though, I'd like to address anyone who thinks that interfaith work might not be a good idea. Those people may or may not be here today, but I still think it is necessary to address the concern that this nation is too diverse, that the religious and ideological spectrum is too broad for people to come together for the common good. I am aware of both social and religious liberals and conservatives who would like to create a bubble or a bunker for themselves where the religious and ideological diversity of this country can't touch them. I would like to demonstrate the potential futility of such an exercise by relating a story from my own life. I used to be one of those people who wanted a bunker or a bubble. Even though I grew up in a religious family, in my preteen and early teenage years, I did not feel like I had a particularly strong faith in really anything. I attended public school through 8th grade, after which I decided to attend Chicago Christian High School in Palos Heights, so that I would have more opportunities to participate in activities and not get lost in the bigger sea of a public high school. Religion was not what I had in mind. And I did get more chances to participate in activities, but an unintended consequence of attending this school was that I found both my interest in Christianity and my faith in God renewed. So when it came time to colleges, I thought to myself that I needed more time in a Christian bubble. Otherwise, my newfound, what I saw as weak faith, would be lost once again. I was exposed to a lot of different, sometimes confusing worldviews. So I decided to attend the small Christian Reformed college that my maternal relatives had attended for 3 generations before me. Calvin College, now University, they changed the name on me, in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And I thought to myself, here I'll be safe to build up my faith in God, and I will be surrounded by only Christians. I was an idiot. I was a huge idiot. Instead of finding a bunker in which to hide from different opinions and beliefs, I found myself being challenged in a very unexpected way. Because every year, all Calvin students are surveyed to gather data on the demographics of the student body, including data on religious identity. In 2014, the student newspaper, The Chimes, published the results of this survey. The results showed that out of more than 4,000 students, 16, or 0.4% of the student body identified with a religious tradition other than Christianity. Guess what person became my roommate? One of the 0.4%. It found me. His name was Jihong Zhang. Jihong was from Shanghai and told me that before he came to Calvin, he had never met a Christian in his life. I asked him what his religious affiliation was, and he informed me that he was a Jihongist. I asked him what that means, and he said it meant that he believed that the existence of God was one of many possibilities. He also told me that he believed in certain aspects of Taoism, Confucianism, and Buddhism, but that he did not consider himself to be very religious. And this was obviously not the sort of roommate that I'd been expecting when I imagined my perfect Christian bunker. But he and I became friends. Good friends. And I think that Jiyoung and I became and have remained friends because we've realized that although we did not agree religiously, and we were those guys who would talk about religion, we had so much in common to learn from one another. What we shared was a deep love of learning, of history, of literature, and philosophy. We were so cool. Like, I'm so not, I mean, so nerds. We both placed a priority on family. We both were committed to treating each other with respect, and we both loved food. As I said, though, Jiyoung and I are different. And because of our religious differences, I think that one of our greatest differences is that Jiyoung was more willing to surround himself with people from widely different worldviews and cultural perspectives without ever feeling the need to modify his beliefs to better match theirs. Jiyoung's simultaneous respect for the beliefs of others and his commitment to his own principles has never ceased to astound me. For example, Jiyoung told me that one of his reasons for coming to a private, small Christian college like Calvin was because he wanted to learn more about a religious tradition to which nearly a third of the global population adhere. And he demonstrated this respect for Christianity and he demonstrated his curiosity by faithfully attending, with more devotion than most Christian students, a local Chinese-speaking church every single week without fail, and participating in a Chinese-speaking Bible study every single week without fail. My friendship with Jiyoung changed me for the better. If I had never met Jiyoung, I do not think that I would be hostile to people of differing faiths and worldviews, but I do think that I would be nowhere near as open to them. My friendship with Jiyoung demonstrated that my fear of losing my faith by interacting with non-Christians was totally unfounded. Instead, I got the best of both worlds, and I not only gained a friend, but I learned to respect the differences between Jiyoung and myself, and to respect the differences between myself and the many conservative Christians who attend Calvin University. And I want to be clear in telling you this story, that I'm not trying to discredit Calvin University as a place of higher learning or to shame people who would choose to attend or work there. I mean, I actually really enjoyed my time there. And because even though the university has many policies that are meant to build a Christian bunker, I still admire the university's commitment to a rigorous academic inquiry and devotion to examining every subject and facet of life through a Christian lens. Although I did not always agree with the college's policy, I respected its commitment to being a place for Christians to fully explore and live out their faith. And I am grateful for both them giving me a chance to strengthen that faith, but also giving me Jiyoung, for sending Jiyoung to me. Because, and I'm also, in a side tangent, grateful to those people, as I learn more about interfaith work, the authors like Eboo Patel and Bryan McLaren, who taught me, along with Jiyoung, that what Jiyoung taught me, that I did not have to water down my faith to be friends with non-Christians and have a deep respect for their beliefs. To this day, I remain an Orthodox Christian through and through. In the Episcopal Church, my branch of the Christian tradition, we say in our liturgy every Sunday that Jesus Christ is the Son of God and that, quote, Christ has died, Christ is risen, and Christ will come again. I fully believe in that creed, and being involved in interfaith work has not changed those beliefs. So my fears were totally unfounded. I walked away from Calvin with a faith that was more accepting, but definitely not weaker. In the words of the Protestant pastor and writer Bryan McLaren, I became interested in being a Christian and having a, quote, Christian identity that moves me toward people of other faiths in wholehearted love, not in spite of their non-Christian identity and not in spite of my own Christian identity, but because of my identity as a follower of God in the way of Jesus. And to conclude, I would like to reiterate, as I said at the beginning, that interfaith work is necessary, interfaith work is difficult, and religious diversity in the United States is unavoidable. The relationship between people of different religious traditions in the United States of America has not always been positive. The horrible history between the mostly white Protestant settlers and the Native Americans is a perfect example of a tragic and deadly relationship between different people. However, throughout our nation's history and even before its founding, there have been glimmers of hope for interfaith cooperation. In 1657, 36 years after the first Thanksgiving, there was an incident in the small Dutch colony of Flushing, now modern-day Queens, where one of the earliest recorded displays of religious tolerance in North America occurred. Freedom of worship had been banned by the Dutch colonial governor, and a group of concerned citizens from the small town of Flushing gathered together to stand up for their persecuted Quaker neighbor, and anyone else who did not belong to the Dutch state religion. They wrote a statement to the governor declaring that freedom of worship should be extended to everyone, including non-Christians. In 1657, what they wrote is called the Flushing Remonstrance, and it includes the beautiful passage saying that the law of love, peace, and liberty in the state extends to Jews, Turks, and Egyptians, as they are considered sons of Adam. Our desire is not to offend one of God's little ones in whatsoever form, name, or title he appears, whether Presbyterian, Independent, Baptist, or Quaker, but shall be glad to see anything of God in any of them, desiring to do unto all men as we desire all men should do unto us. Then, in 1739, roughly 80 years later, the founding father, Benjamin Franklin, contributed money to the building of a hall in Philadelphia for the use of any community that did not have its own space in Philadelphia. And in his autobiography, he explicitly wrote that this hall could be open for the use of Muslims, as well as Christian sects. Then finally in 1790, 170 years after the landing of the Pilgrims in North America, the first president of the United States, George Washington, wrote a response to a letter from the leader of a Jewish congregation in Newport, Rhode Island, who wanted to know whether Jews would receive the same rights and religious freedoms as other Americans. Washington wrote, quote, "All possess alike the liberty of conscience and immunities of citizenship. It is now no more that toleration is spoken of as if it was by the indulgence of one class of people, that another enjoyed the exercise of their inherent natural rights. For happily the government of the United States, which gives to bigotry no sanction, to persecution no assistance, requires only that they who live under its protection should demean themselves as good citizens, in giving it on all occasions their effectual support." Occasions like this in our country's history unfortunately have been rare. I would hope that as we move forward, stories of interfaith cooperation become, to use a biblical phrase, as numerous as the stars in the sky and as the sands on the seashore. Thank you.